Namibia is popular among tourists. While the sector is doing better than last year, it's been performing below expectations according to the latest travel index by the First National Bank of Namibia FNB and Federation of Namibian Tourism Associations FENATA.
So the FNB FENATA index actually tracks the performance of the tourism industry in the country. So it's an index which we created, and specifically it composes of the currency exchange rate of the currency exchange rate. I mean, that means that's a measure of the Namibian dollar against other major currencies in the country, I mean in the world. It also tracks the international arrivals. So that means the number of passengers or tourists that arrives in the country. And in the third component of it is what we call the occupancy rate, the bed occupancy rate, which again is just a rate of that tracks on how many beds were occupied in hotels and other accommodation establishments, as opposed to how many beds were available in those establishments.
The travel index is released every 3 months, and in the last quarter, the travel index dipped.
From the previous quarter, what we have basically seen is that the general or the overall performance of the sector, even though it was still a contraction, looking at the three components that we looked at, one actually improves, and that's the bed occupancy. So the bed occupancy improved in comparison to the previous quarters, but that, however, alone, it was not enough to lift up the performance of the sector, because if you look at the other components of it, which is the currency exchange rate and also the load factors, it means they did a little bit much weaker than the others. So they weigh in more than the bed occupancy, and that actually causes the whole overall index to contract or to slip.
When asked to pinpoint a contributing factor to the index's dip, Nambashu pointed to the number of visitors coming to the country.
For the past 3 months, we have actually recorded quite a number of flights coming to the country, but that does not necessarily mean those flights were full of passengers on them. So again, and that also, it's one of the components that we use in tracking the performance of the industry. So and that's what we call the load factors. So it's just a component of the index itself. So if you look at the number of flights coming to the country, so we want to put that in terms of the volumes, in terms of passengers. Are those planes really full of people as they're coming into the country? So you can record 5,000 or even hundreds of planes coming in the country, but it does not necessarily mean they were all full of passengers. And that's, again, it's what we have actually tried to track and put it in the load factors calculations, which we call the ratios of those, just to give an indication of how many passengers were really on those planes. And those numbers, in reality, they are actually going down, so they are not increasing. So again, that explains that more passengers does not transfer or transform into more tourists entering the country.
Nambashu says, however, that feedback from players in the industry are positive that visitor numbers will pick up. With escalating operational costs, coupled by tough competition from Botswana and South Africa, however, it remains to be seen.